All right, welcome back. So let's take a minute to talk about where you should apply to. Now, I'm a big believer that you should cast a wide net, apply to as many places as is feasible for you. And one of the big questions that I always get asked and that weighed on me heavily when I was applying is, do I apply to just MD schools or do I apply to MD and DO schools? So MD schools at this in this day and age are going to be considered more prestigious. You will have slightly better opportunities for residency matching, and it just holds a little bit more gravitas. But as I'll demonstrate here in just a second, not that much. Really, us MDs like to think we're better than we actually are, which we are definitely not if you look at the statistics. So me personally, I applied to MD and DO schools, and my first acceptance was into a DO school, which took the pressure off of the whole rest of the process because I knew that I was already in, and everything else was just going to give me more opportunities. So I highly recommend you apply to DO schools. That being said, let's look at a little bit of data, not too much, but uh, here's some of the statistics on match rates for MDs. Well, sorry, for DOs. In most regards, the chance of matching is above 80%, and a lot of them above 90%, especially in the more primary care oriented fields. This data is from it's either 2017 or 2018, so it's probably even changed from this in DOs in the favor of osteopathic students. Now, if you want to be an interventional radiologist, if you want to be an orthopedic surgeon or a dermatologist, it can still happen, but it's going to be more difficult. Those competitive fields, it's hard for MDs to get into. It's definitely hard for DOs to get into. So if you are set on, I need to be an interventional radiologist, maybe you would consider going MD only. But in any other situation, I would suggest applying to both. And another thing that I learned kind of the hard way as you're out on the application trail is I was not as competitive as I thought I was. And I feel like everybody is a little bit that way where um, especially coming from SUU, you kind of get that big fish in a small pond mentality where it's like, oh, my application's awesome. I've got this and this and this and this. But if you've sat on the application committee and you see the competition that you're up against, it is just staggering the level of talent that is out there, which I think is wonderful for the field, but it makes it very competitive. So it definitely is in your favor to apply broadly and apply realistically. Like I applied to, where was it? Was it like Columbia and the Mayo Clinic and places like that where it's like, what are you doing, Cody? You're not going to get in there. Spend your application money on places that are realistic. Not to say you shouldn't have some reach schools, but I feel like it's good to have like a 40-40 20 maybe, where it's like 40% are reasonable schools that you have a good chance of getting into. Something like, the University of Utah, I would feel like would be in that reasonable category. I'd have 40% as, like safety schools, where these are, more of like the DO schools, where if you have a good application, you have a good chance of getting into these. And these are obviously going to be different for each person depending on your application. Talk with Rita, talk with your advisors to figure out where you sit. And then I'd reserve that 20% for the pie in the sky places, the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, whatever, because it doesn't hurt to have dreams and to push hard. Who knows? You might just connect with that right committee member that helps get you through. Overall, just apply broadly. So let's look at a couple more numbers just to, show that I'm not totally lying to you or making things up as we go. So let's first look at this graph over on the left. So the U.S. seniors, that red line is basically like U.S. MD students, and these are match rates to residencies. By the way, this isn't people getting into medical school. This is people matching to residency, which will, basically be once you get to medical school, this is your next goal that you want to be focused on even now. So U.S. seniors have, kind of just been this flat, like 90 to 95% always match in their, into a PGY1 program, into a good residency program of their choice. which is great. And it stayed flat for years and years and years and years, hasn't changed, probably isn't likely to change much. But I think the more interesting line is the osteopathic schools. Now, that's the one represented by the dark blue line, where you can see their numbers of match rates have gone up and up and up. And I think that's a combination of factors, including more residency programs are DO oriented, and the osteopathic schools have created residency programs, and that's part of it. But I think the bigger part of it is DOs are more and more accepted. People are starting to understand more and more that a DO is the same as an MD in almost every respect. And the trend data correlates with that. If you look at some of these other lines, now this is another thing I would caution against. I say apply broadly. I would not apply to Caribbean schools. I would not apply to Australian, Singapore, or Ireland schools for USMD degrees, basically, or I shouldn't say USMD, but MD degrees that you get offshore. People do this. People can find success with them, but they do not have the match rates. They don't have the same respect. It's going to be, that gets to the level where it's harder to find jobs with that kind of a degree. Not that you can't find a job with that kind of degree. I just think it's a very difficult hurdle to put on yourself when there's already so much to struggle with. So my personal opinion is I wouldn't apply to offshore MD schools. The admission committees know what they are, and they know that the majority of people that go there are not likely the cream of the crop applicants that they want in their residency programs. So let's turn our attention to the graph on the right side. So if we see, these are just the match rates for getting in, and you can see that USMDs, they had basically a 94% match rate. And USDO seniors had a pretty much 91% match rate, which is up, as you can see. They've got an up arrow, so it's even increasing by 2.6% in a year. That's really good. So is it really worth it to have to wait? Oftentimes, if you don't apply to DO schools, you're going to be waiting an extra year to get into an MD school. Not all the time, but oftentimes. So is it really worth an extra year just to try and have that 3.7%? I don't think so. And I think you should all apply to DO schools, even if it's just to provide yourself with some more options and some extra opportunity to have some interviews to practice for the MD schools that you quote really want to go to. Go for DOs. They are great.